that idea of being open and reconciliation and forgiveness and it's really at the center of everything that I'm doing, even though I never realized that before, because you're in a rock and roll band and you're touring everywhere, but all the lyrics and everything I was talking about was pretty much oriented in that way.
Between the Grooves is hosted by James Curtis, music director and morning man in the Greater Toronto Area on Joy Radio, and Drew Brown, Juno-nominated singer-songwriter and worship leader. Both hope to share insights into Christian music, exploring ministry, message, and everything in between. You can connect with the show at faithstrongtoday.com/betweenthegrooves or via Twitter @betweengrooves. Now, here's James and Drew.
Hey everybody, welcome to Between the Grooves, your weekly look at music, ministry, and everything in between with today's top Christian artists.
And today, a great conversation with a French-Canadian artist. And this is a gentleman by the name of Alex Henry Foster, has done the jazz scene in Montreal. This guy has had a lot of accolades, quite frankly. Not a guy that I was really familiar with before this conversation. But let me tell you, a great story. Talked about forgiveness and reconciliation, dealing with depression, hate, violence, destruction. It's incredible to see where he is now compared to where he was from. I would not want to know this guy 20 years ago. That would be scary.
But yes, I understand. Yeah, completely.
Yeah. So this is a great story that we're going to share with you in just a bit. That is coming up. But first, Drew, we've recently seen and spoken about this in the past few weeks about musicians selling their catalogs. Bob Dylan, Neil Young, Stevie Nicks, others.
Yeah.
But one thing I've noticed is, and this isn't anything new for artists either, but I guess I'm just noticing this more and more over the last few months where you're seeing a few artists sell off their gear, amps, guitars, whatever.
Yep.
I saw recently one of Eddie Van Halen's guitars going up for auction. This is not the first time, of course. This is one of the ones he gave away, and somebody's trying to make a buck, I guess. And it'll fetch, hundreds of thousands of dollars for this guitar. Certainly not what Eddie Van Halen paid for it, if he paid anything for it, right?
Yeah, seriously.
But a lot of people, a lot of artists are selling off gear, and I don't know, is now the time to cash in on collectibles, whether it's a time for you to sell your stuff or to buy something that's worth something because somebody famous used to own it. What are your thoughts?
I think any time is a good time to to buy those kind of collectibles. But yeah, I'm seeing that as well, especially like when I think about like some of the Canadian bands that have come up in the last like 20 or 30 years. I'm seeing a lot of those artists or musicians on Facebook or on other social media selling their stuff. Lots of guitars for sale, drums for sale, at reasonable prices, but higher than most, but reasonable, so they can still make a collector's items kind of money.
Sure.
But low enough that like people can actually afford to buy it. I'm seeing that a lot more, especially since Christmas. I've been seeing that a lot more. So I'm curious about why now? Is it just because it's a pandemic and people need cash? Or is there like a cool like season of people like selling things and people wanting to buy things?
Well, maybe it's just them wanting to upgrade the equipment that they have. Maybe they're looking at the future now saying, okay, we're going to be going back on the road. We're going to actually be able to tour again. Let's get some new gear, some upgraded equipment. This one guitar is kind of looking shabby now. Let's just get rid of that, get something new, the new look, kind of reinventing yourselves in a sense, because a lot of people may have forgotten who you are or what you look like in a real show.
Yeah.
So that could be part of it too. I do think the financial part is some of it. Like if you're going to buy new gear, it'd be nice that you can sell off something for $50 and the new equipment costs you $100. So at the end of the day, it only costs you $50, right? Like it just costs you less money because of that.
Yeah, I've done both, like the recouping thing, but also the I just need the cash, so I'm going to sell. I need some kind of someone to sell this guitar, sell these pedals, or whatever. But usually for me, it's the recouping thing. Like I want to sell these pedals so I can get this amp, or I'm going to sell this amp because I want this guitar. Usually that's the game that I tend to play the most. Yeah.
Now, the musician that you are, and the green eyes of what's that called when you're looking at something and you really want it?
Gas. Gear acquisition syndrome.
That's right. There's words for that. But the envious, the lust or envious or whatever.
Yeah.
And you're looking at stuff that you really want. Do you actually, now be honest with me, do you actually go and buy the stuff and then worry about how you're going to offset the cost? In other words, okay, I bought it. It cost me more than I was anticipating. I really need to, find a way to help pay for this. Let me sell some of my gear. Is that kind of the way you look at things sometimes?
Only if it's on sale. If I see something that's on sale, then
a deal that you can't pass up. Yeah.
That's right. Otherwise than that, I sell my stuff first. That way I know for sure it's there. Because I've done that once where I'm like, I'll just buy it and I never could sell that piece of gear or get the money that I wanted for it. So I actually came out on a loss.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, I will never do that again. So I'm always making sure I'm selling things first, unless it's something crazy on sale. Then I'll just jump on it.
Now, as a musician and an artist, do you budget for gear? Like, do you, at the beginning of your, I hate to sound organized because a lot of musicians aren't, but at the beginning of your, say, fiscal year, do you do a budget and look at, here's what I want to achieve this year. Here's what I think I can make as far as revenue is concerned based on concerts. I know that's been difficult the last year or so, but generally speaking, do you budget for gear as well?
Yeah, so I have like two lines. One, it's kind of like just like the breakables or the things I know I'll need this year, like guitar picks or guitar strings, or those things.
The
I have a budget line for that.
Consumable items,
right? Exactly. So I have a line for that. But then with gear, everything changes, or
technology changes. Yeah,
this is the thing,
or new stuff comes out. Yeah,
exactly. And so I have like it's like, honestly, it's just a line that's sort of there. So I know I should have this kind of money somewhere in my budget. So usually it's between like $500 and $750, which isn't enough for anything amazing.
Right.
But it will cover like a couple pedals or cover like amps or big amp repairs, or like a major repair to an amp.
Oh, yeah, because you got to consider repairs as well. Like if you've got equipment going down, you need to get that thing repaired right away. You can't just like, well, when I can afford it, you need it right away because that's your livelihood, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I tend to sort of keep like $750 in there. Like I don't need new guitars, I don't need new pedals, but you never know. So I always have like $750 kind of lined up, which isn't enough for anything major, but at least it keeps me going.
Yeah. So you don't need it, but you'd like it.
I like it.
Yeah.
I think there's only one time where I was like, I need this amp, and I bought it, and it was the best decision I've ever made.
Well, I thought you were about to say, there was this one time I needed this amp and I bought it, and then I figured out I didn't need it.
No.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
Yeah, no.
Anyways, it is time to get into our conversation with Alex Henry Foster. Again, he's a French-Canadian artist, and he's got a lot of accolades under his belt, and he's got a great story. This story kind of has blown both of us away, to see where he's come from. Seriously, on a serious note here, where if you hear what he's gone through and where he started, and how he used music as an outlet, really, to channel his energy, if you want to call it that.
Yeah, that's right.
I can remember when I was a teenager, and really, honestly, I can say that the only thing that kept me in church was the fact that there was somebody in the church that took me under their wing and taught me how to do audio and sound for services and stuff. Because honestly, if I didn't have that opportunity, I don't know if I would still be attending church, right? And this guy was a guy that was in gangs. He, was full of violence. I don't know how bad he was, but it sounds pretty bad. And if he had kept going down that road, where he would be today versus where he's come from is just it's an incredible story that we're going to share with you, and he's going to share with us. Alex Henry Foster, Going Between the Grooves.
When people are asking me about Montreal, and it's very funny because I've got some kind of a love-hate relationship with Montreal, especially about the weather. And I said, well, if someone's inviting you between November and May, early May, then you understand how that person feels about you, and you're not.
That's right. That's right.
You understand pretty quickly that, oh, well, what are whoops.
Yeah. And we've talked with artists, say in Nashville as an example, where they've never been to Canada, and they suggest, I was thinking of coming to Toronto sometime like after Christmas, like January, February, and we just start laughing. It's like, do you know what you're getting into? Right?
Don't bother.
But, it's each his own. If you really want to, that's fine.
I was in Nashville a few months ago. Yeah, exactly. If you want to experience something that's going to be very brutal, I mean, you're more than welcome. But I mean, who needs that?
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my gosh.
So was Montreal home for you growing up?
Yes. Yeah. I really I grew up in the city on the island, and that was very particular at the time because my parents were having a lot of financial problems. So we kept on moving around the city in all the bad places, so I was always like the new kid in school. And so I could feel like all the bullies being very happy about fresh meat, every 2 months. So that was some kind of like that kind of thing that was going on all over and over again. So it's funny for me when I say that I've got some kind of a love-hate relationship with Montreal, because I experienced so many wonderful things, but also the foundation was pretty intense for me as a kid. So that was a very unique learning experience about human nature, I would say, growing up. So that's the nice way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough.
So what I mean, obviously this podcast is where we explore the connection between music and faith. So let's talk a little bit about faith in your life, and when did you become a believer, and given all your past, because I know you've mentioned, we know that you had a broken childhood, there was abuse, there was depression, there was thoughts of suicide. So tell us, I guess, how that all happened in and around your faith.
I think it was witnessing how everything is connected pretty much to my father, because my father was someone that was a broken individual and was struggling with all the things that you mentioned. I think he was struggling a whole lot with those: alcoholism, broken home, poverty, lack of self-esteem, and a sense of failure. So that was very, very difficult for him. At the same time, he was really looking for answers and looking to find a purpose for his life. And so growing up, I was like looking at this man being completely a total wreck and looking for answers in all sorts of things. I mean, we could have like started like probably like a business of like books about rocks and the planets and energy and all those things, because there was so many things he was looking for that it was very distressing for me to see that man being so broken, but at the same time being so eager to find answers. So that was very singular in a way. But when one night, and it really happened just like that. One night he told my mother, okay, I'm going to go in just for a walk, which was already like weird. So for me, it was like, okay, probably like he's going to drink with buddies or something like that, And so he left, and 3 hours after he came back home with a Bible, and like, I found it. I know. Now everything is clear. And I was like looking at him just like, okay, that's going to be very interesting, and because I went through all those emotions as a kid, and that was very, very difficult for me. I didn't get that thing that positively, I would say, because I was very happy for him that he found peace and that he found a real profound conviction that he was that he had found like salvation and redemption and he was forgiven. But for me, the challenge was that's cool for you, but what about mom and I? What about our what our part of the deal in all of it? Because we are broken. You've been like it wasn't that bad, but I mean it wasn't very positive, and so that was very difficult for me to conciliate that faith thing and that man being like out of the sudden like joyful and and wanted to be a dad and suddenly being a husband. And so I was pretty hard on him, and I was like starting to be in street gangs and involved in a lot of violence and everything. And pretty much everything I wanted to do was just to confront him and just to make him pay in a way by my own self-destruction. So, and for him, it must have been so difficult to see that, because he felt guilty in a way. He felt very, you're just like, you feel responsible. And yeah, it was like, I kept going and going and going, just like adding to the wounds more and more and more as I was like going deep in that darkness, if I may. And as I was confronting him with his own faith and belief, so my father was like, yeah, but, and especially that I was reading a lot, and he said, yeah, but you never read anything. You never opened the Bible once. So what are you talking about? So my dad kind of he did like some judo with me, the way I was treating him and trying to make a fool of himself. He was like, yeah, but what are you talking about? So I'm going to picture you guys just an image of having like a guy who's clearly representing hate and violence in every possible ways, from the way he's dressed to the way he's acting. I'm in Montreal. I think it was in a metro. And so I'm reading the Bible. I don't have any clue about this thing. I'm just looking to find something that I can just keep picking on my father. And so there's a super sweet lady looking at me, and she probably thought like, oh wow, that's awesome. What a wonderful vision of a young man who's looking, right. Who's having a real relationship with God.
Right. What a sweet boy.
And then she kept on looking. Yeah, exactly. And she kept on looking at me and with a smile, and she was radiating, like she was like pure joy. And at one point, I just went to her and said, like, look, what are you looking at? Can you please stop looking at me? And she was just like, she just got back in her seat. I'm talking about it. I'm kind of laughing, but that was so mean. So that was the thing, and I kept going on and going on, and until the Old Testament was pretty cool for me, coming from like a very violent environment. So I thought that God was pretty awesome.
Right.
Yeah, right. That's right. That's how you deal things.
Oh, that's funny.
But then later on, learning and just like getting into like Christ and how loving He is. And then slowly my heart starting to change towards that, because I realized that I was the product, not only of a broken home, that would have been too easy. So that was the narrative I was giving my dad. But the reality is I was the product of my own desperation. And I kept on blaming everybody else around. And so slowly I was discovering something that was very touching, that was fulfilling as well. And even though I didn't feel like I was looking for a purpose or that I was lost in any way, what I realized was the fact that I was empty. I was just like, I was only, and the way I was dealing that emptiness was to feel that with more and more anger and self-destruction. So, and because I was like used to go to church with my dad just to make fun of everybody. And so one night I went there, and when starting from the first time you went there and everybody's like, oh, that's awesome. And to the point where, oh no, not him again. So that's what I was at that point with church-wise. So I just went with my dad, and my dad was very suspicious. Just like, okay, so what is he going to do now? And And I really, for the first time, was with a friend, and I really paid attention, and there was like the pivotal moment was when they were saying like, "You'll know truth, and truth will set you free," and that kept inside. That thing kept running for a while, and I was wondering what freedom was about. So that was something that kept on going within me for quite some time, and that was something that I think that really maybe was a reflection of how bad I was feeling, because I felt trapped. I was so deep into that gang thing. I was so deep into that desperation part of my life that I didn't know how. Okay, so how do you say, well, guys, you know what? We had a great time, so I don't want to play that gang thing anymore. You know, just it's not necessarily that easy. So, but I kept on exploring, and the more I was exploring, the more I was touched, because for me it was the simplicity of love rather than all the complexity of what I felt religion was about at the time. So, because for me, I saw that at the beginning as a set of rules, you know, do that or don't do that, or, you know, you need to walk that way and you need to dress that way. And so the only way I was seeing that whole thing was through religion's eyes, I would say, my perspective, my perception of what religion was about. But when I discovered Christ and his teaching and how he was loving and how kind and welcoming he was towards people that I could refer myself to, so then I felt welcome. I didn't feel like I had to be like a certain kind of person to approach that thing, because for me it was still a thing. And so slowly it was really through that love that kept like a lot of lights in my life, and I was just like, well, you know what? It's clear that this doesn't make any sense. I just the price to pay to keep going in that circle was too much to ask for me now for what I was receiving at the time. Because when I joined those guys, it was because I didn't have any friends. I wanted to connect. I needed like some kind of a family, a group, to be acknowledged and to be welcome. But then as you grow, you realize in the context of violence and hate, then you realize that, wait a minute, this is not who I am. And if it's who I am, this is not who I want to be. And that's the thing, because you're becoming, even though you don't want to admit it, you're becoming that hate. You're becoming that source of hatred. And even though I was in complete denial, I'm not like that. I'm not that violent. No, I'm not that desperate. No, it's not true. But even though I was like trying to fight that truth, I realized that I was more and more miserable. So when I started to slowly welcome that light and welcome that notion of love, so then suddenly I was able to see myself for who I was. And that was very difficult, because it's like going from being like a loner to find friends who are in gangs. I could have been like in a chess group, you know, if any chess oriented people would have, you know, welcomed me, or any like baseball cards or whatever. But the bad thing was the only people who got like interested in me was that kind of group. So it's not like I chose, you know, it's just like, oh yeah, that's all the different options that I have. Well, okay, I'm going to go for, you know, oh yeah, darts seems cool. Okay. Hiking. No, not you guys. Okay. Hatred. So it was more of a need, like a very human need to connect that led me there. But after that, even though you're saying like, well, that wasn't what I agreed on at the beginning, because this is not who I am. And then to the point where you're realizing, well, this is exactly who you are. You can put whatever name you want it. You can put whatever, description, but this is exactly who you are. And when you realize that, then you're in front of, you need to decide, is it like, okay, do you keep going back to the denial phase, or you're just like, well, okay, I'm going to take a dive here, and I need to take a break for a while and just try to define who I am, and just to decide where my life is going.
I got to say, Alex, I think the truth of the matter is the chess club was actually scared of you.
Maybe
that's the reason. That's the reason why they didn't welcome you. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, maybe you're right.
Eh?
So no offense to anyone part of those groups. I'm not blaming you guys.
That's right. But it's cool though. Like, it's cool that like Christ's love and light sort of made you feel less of an outsider. I think it's really cool, and that's a very common story with a lot of people. It's really cool to hear it within your story. I'm curious about, like, you're in that place where you're kind of like trapped in that web of self-destruction and gangs and hate and violence, and then you had this really cool injection of faith and light and love. Mm-hmm. So what moved you towards creating and communicating through song?
Oh, way later. For me, music was a big part of my life growing up, because it was the way my parents were helping me to emancipate my world, because since I was in a very being in a very modest environment tends to clog your perspective or imagination. So the way my parents were opening my worldview was through music and literature and all those things, art. So music always been part of my life, but it really came way after, because after that, when I left those hatred groups, then it was very very difficult for me, because then I was still associated with them from other people's perspective, and those guys didn't want to do anything with me anymore, obviously. So I was really in a place of loneliness, but also I realized that, and isolation, but I realized now that it was the perfect way for me to get some kind of a emotional detox, I would say. And that was the first time that I was able to look at myself through that mirror of love and light, because it would have been very easy for me just to say, well, I'm a bad person, and to keep waving that flag, and then everybody will have come to me, and just like, especially within the concept of the context of the church, you say, well, you're welcome and we're happy, which they were. But for me, I needed something else, and that was more personal, more intimate. And that period of great isolation was very, very awesome, because then I was able to discover things through my new faith, and to discover things about love, about compassion, about forgiveness, and also about the reasons why I was dealing with those emotions in the first place. So that was it's been a very, very good thing for me. And then we started to communities, so having people to come and meet and talk and share about either like all sorts of topics, depression and art, and so it was very natural. People gathered, and suddenly we were like a community, and then music slowly started to come into play, and started to play music with guys, met the other guys and the other member of the group at that point, and through the context of the community. So it wasn't like I wanted to be a musician and I became a musician, and because I was like Christian, so then it made all sense. For me, it really started with the people. It started with the community, started with like that sense of communion with others, and to welcome people like I felt in the very, very, very early stage of my discovery. I wanted people to felt welcome rather than just invited. Because for me, I make like a big difference. You can invite people, and then I'm going to tell you why I'm right, and I'm going to tell you how awesome my life is for you to join, even if I've got like all the best intentions in the world. But for me, welcoming, it's like whoever you are, whatever you believe, whatever, you know, if you're agreeing or not, it doesn't matter. I'm inviting you, and then we can have like a real communion together, and we can share, we can cry together, we can walk in life without having agendas.
I always find,
even if it's a good thing.
I always find
so for me, it all started like that.
Yeah, I always find it's fascinating how someone's past relates to what they're doing now, and you know, the story behind all of that stuff. I mean, Drew, for you, you're delving into music completely different. I mean, for you, it's just the girls, right?
No, impossible.
Say that every time.
Am I right?
But, I mean, go ahead.
Who am I talking to right now? I thought you guys were serious.
No, we do have a little fun once in a while. Wait a minute. That's the wrong podcast.
Wait a minute.
That's the wrong show. What am I doing?
Exactly. Wait a minute. All right, I'm calling my publicist right now. I'm getting back to you guys.
Right,
just
right.
Make sure.
Yeah.
That's right. Oops, wrong number.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm a little curious if I can ask Alex, and this isn't, it doesn't have to be a comical moment here, but I'm really curious as to the time when your dad came home, when he went for that 3-hour walk, to the time that you sat in church and when you actually listened for the first time. What kind of time frame was that? Like, was it years? Was it months? And the reason why I'm wondering is, how much hell did you put your parents through?
Probably years, I would say. It's difficult for me to really pinpoint that like in a very precise way, but probably years. I was so messed up, and that's the funny story in a way, because and it is very funny, because the more happy he was becoming, the more miserable I wanted him to feel.
Right.
So
yes.
Since he was very, very, very happy, so that kind of dance, lasted for quite a long time. So,
poor guy.
And the more, and my dad was like 6'3", 250 pounds, like a big guy who worked, manually all his life, and me, I'm like, when on my hockey card, I would say like 5'7", but with ice skates.
Right.
So that was very funny to see that big guy was probably like just like praying every time not to try to sit me down, somewhere. And the more loving he was, the more difficult it became, because as much as it's everything I ever wanted from him as a father, it's everything that was having a real impact in me, and I didn't want to have anything to do with that. And I just realized through that how sensitive I was to that kindness. Mm-hmm. And even though I was like very hardcore with him, I mean, in all possible ways, and he kept coming. He never quite lose his cool. And after a month, discovering a new thing, you say, okay, well, it's normal. But after years, to see that guy still being like pretty cool about all the crazy things I was coming up with. So at one point, I figured it was real. And then I started to look at him as a real product of a transformation that was real, rather than just like, okay, well, this is a new phase. And, I've seen it all. He was coming back, from I don't know where, with like rocks, and he was rubbing himself with that. Or other times it was like about aliens. So the guy was looking for something that never lasted, but to see him being and he never looked transformed in any way through all of this. And it's this, and I'm not talking about, whether it's not good or not. For me, I don't even have to be judgmental about it, because I'm just telling what I saw from firsthand. And my dad coming from a complete wreck to, like, out of the sudden becoming a husband, caring for friends, for others, for me, taking time with me. The first time my dad came to me and said, "Oh, what kind of music are you listening to?" I was like, "Oh, this is weird. And this is also a wonderful opportunity to get all those records that I never really listened to freak him up, So that was the kind of relationship that I had. But he kept coming back. And I was like, that guy is crazy. He kept coming back and coming back and coming back. But through him, I was able to see love being incarnated in a way, in a very simple man, in a very simple way. That doesn't have anything to do with my perception that I had about quote unquote religion and church. So that's why for me, when I accepted the fact that, all right, this is after a few years, and I said, okay, well, this guy is, this is really happening, and this is going to stick. So I think that was a moment where I was able to accepting that and acknowledging the fact that, it was pretty obvious that he was completely transformed. But then I was slowly opening my heart towards him and others. And I think the most intense moment I had with my dad was a few months after I started to go to church and to figure things out. And I don't even know if I was a Christian or not. For me, that tag didn't mean anything. But that moment that I had with my father was that very significant moment was when, again, big guy, big hands, he can like dunk my head, any time of the day, just like those big hands. And I was just like beside him, and I grabbed his hand and I looked at him and I said, "I forgave you. Would you forgive me?" So that was a very intense moment, because it wasn't out of like a very sentimental preach, or like, it wasn't about like the music being played in minor and then suddenly like I'm feeling like I have to say something. It was really like out of nowhere. I just like grabbed his enormous hand and just look at him, just like, "I forgive you. Would you forgive me?" And that was very significant for me. I think that, it's difficult sometimes to, especially for something that is so emotional and personal and intimate, it's difficult to put a timeline or to try to figure things out in a more concrete kind of way. Or so for me, it was really like that moment was pivotal for whatever happened next. So, and then I was able to feel a bit more free than I was before that moment. And every time we had like arguments with years passing by, I kept going back to that moment, because that was the most significant moment I had with him, regardless of whatever happened after or whatever like expectations I might have had towards him or him towards me. So that was a foundation of something that was so pure, so honest, and so how can I say, so it wasn't about me no more. It was just about him, and just to be kind to him, and in a very self-giving way, I would say. So that's why after that I kept growing, obviously, and having like ideas of my own, and having like different opportunities, and life slowly drifting me in different directions. But I think that dimension to offer forgiveness is one of the most incredible gifts you can give anyone. And that's something that I'm talking a lot with people, because this is really, especially for me, that I hated him so much, even though, I couldn't care less being in a church or not. I still had things very deeply rooted inside of me, even as a young adult, that was going back way, way back as a kid. And I was still looking at him, even though I realized he was like transformed and everything. I was still looking at him like someone who should have done better or should have done differently. And then I would have lived all the bad things that I lived. And so that was how I was seeing things, until I realized that, yeah, he could have, but he wasn't in a place where he could. But my decisions, what I did, what I dwelled myself into, the hate, the violence, the desperation, the self-destruction, that wasn't his decision. It was mine. And slowly you're taking ownership of your story. Even though
that is so true. It's interesting that you say that. Yeah, because a lot of people will use the past as an excuse as to how they are now, versus taking ownership of it. And so that says a lot right there. How has that influenced your music? In many ways, I think that idea of being open and reconciliation and forgiveness and it's really at the center of everything that I'm doing, even though I never realized that before, because you're in a rock and roll band and you're touring everywhere, but all the lyrics and everything I was talking about was pretty much oriented in that way. And me, I always been in a general market, so I never felt like I had to say things in order to fit in different markets, or I had to say things in order to be accepted or welcome in different places. It was really, I think it was out of this contemplation about love, about others, and also, to be honest, a little bit more honest with myself, where I was about different issues, because I never been someone who was like very political or very like full on activist. For me, it was always been about the people, always been about that communion, always about human emotions, to connect with people. And to do so, you can preach as much as you want, but for me, and that's all right, that's good. But for me, it was never really appealed to me. So it was more about connecting with people through my music and being honest at the moment where I'm creating that music. And that's why I'm now in a bit of a shift, like in my musical journey, because when my dad died a few years ago, and that fire wasn't there no more. I had like some kind of like a spiritual fatigue, and I heard it all, saw it all, and I was very, very tired, also physically, emotionally, spiritually, and was always on the road. We were incredibly blessed to be able to tour everywhere in the world. But I would admit that the fire that was there at the beginning, wasn't there no more. It's not like, oh, were you still bleeding? It wasn't about that at all. It wasn't even a question. It was just, kind of losing that sensitivity that at some point kept you going no matter what happened. Then I was just like doing my thing, and it became only entertainment, if you know what I mean. Just going through the motions, I guess, eh?
Yeah, and when and I think it struck me in a very hard way, because I wasn't really because I was always on the road, and that's a very convenient excuse. But I wasn't really in contact with my father no more, and I was living my life, he was living his life, but there was more to it. I think that that connection that used to, even though singular, that connection might have been a bit off at that point, because I was just, I kept on going in the motion. I was like a dead fish going in the water. It's very easy. You feel like you're flying, but you're just like in the stream, but you're basically dead. So that's where I was. And when I saw my dad, like a week before he passed, to see him being so joyful freaked me out. I was like, wait a minute. I mean, he was on his deathbed and he was like praising the Lord. He was like so into it. And for me, where I was in my life, I was like, wait a minute. I mean, what are you talking about? I mean, I'm so joyful, and he was in very bad shape. I was like, I wasn't even emotionally able to take it all in, to see him like that, being so skinny. I mean, he always been a big guy, very like tough man. And just for me, it was stressing, to say the least. And he was so joyful. I was like, wait a minute, how can he be? Mm-hmm. I mean, yeah, of course, I understand. That there's a party coming, but I mean, it's wow, you're really into it,
Yeah.
and it was beautifully confronting, because I went there, I sat, and I was looking, because my biggest issue as a son was that I never been able to have conversations about where I was coming from, what he was before it all, for me to understand what as then man was struggling with, or having like maybe like depression or things like that were still part of my ecosystem and what I was going through at some point. And I needed to understand, and I thought it was very selfish of him to deprive me from understanding where we were from, and to see him, for me going back to see him with the intent of having those answers, and to see him being so joyful was even more, it was even more conflicting with my relationship with him and my relationship with faith, because it was like, as a man of faith, you should understand what your duty to leave something. And that's what we were talking. And at one point, my dad just looked at me and he told me something that was so powerful, simple, but so powerful. He said, you need to leave the past behind. He said, Alex, I know you've never been scared to die, but you're still scared to live. And he broke me there. It was just like,
those are deep words, but really, really good words. Like talk about a wise dad, eh?
I mean, think about it, guys. I got there with like big shades, all the right haircut for the moment, dressed the part. And I was just like a kid. When he talked to me, I was just like, you know what? This is that uniform. It's just like this is ridiculous. Mm-hmm. Because you put and you don't even realize it. You put so much care in all those things, but you don't realize that it's not. And again, I don't want to receive like hate mails. What do you mean you don't like cool haircuts? This is not what I'm talking about. This is
but the facade, the appearance, the outward experience. Exactly. Absolutely, yeah.
Exactly. You're putting so much care into that, and you're losing, and it starts very slowly, and then it takes so much place in your life, because it's a way also to allow yourself to look the other way. And when I was seated there and my dad was talking, and that was probably like the second most meaningful moment after that forgiveness moment we had, that we talked together. And he just said, just stop hurting yourself. Why don't you follow what you have inside? Go, stop, hurting yourself like you do, and to always try to justify your your fear of either failures, your self-inflicted emotional pain. Just keep going. Stop looking for answers that you might either way you'll never be satisfied with the explanations I might give you. And that was such like a real, honest, kind, loving moment. And I was just like seated on his bed, and he just put his hand on my hand, and it reminded me that moment that we had like long before. And he just said, "I love you." I was just like, whoa. Look,
no.
This is, whoa, wait a minute. And again, people might like listen to that and just like, yeah, okay, well, that's cool. But it's when you're stuck in a very complex kind of emotional environment, and you don't even see any ways to get out of it, and that you're starting to learn how to live with it and just to accept it. Well, okay, well, this is it. This is, that's maybe genetics or whatever, and this is and also we don't talk much about mental illness in the church. It's like it's some kind of a taboo as well. We should all be like joyful all the time.
Yeah,
that's right.
But that's something that you don't really, at least at that point, that I never felt like maybe. And again, it's not about the church. It's about me. I wasn't talking about that
right
at all. That was like the hidden part. That was like, so how are you happy, Alex? Of course. And then the reasons were, of course, look, this is amazing. We're touring all over the world and we're meeting so many people. But, this is not, oh, cool. That's what you do. But why are you happy or not? So nobody had access to that because I wasn't happy. That was the reality of it. And 4 days after my dad passed, I was like in Taiwan playing in front of 90,000 people. We were headlining a concert, and I didn't felt anything. I was disgusted with myself. I said, what am I doing here? Asking people to jump around. Who does that? This is, what are you doing? And I felt so ridiculous. And because it wasn't about the show itself, it wasn't about doing the show or not. It was just me being such a fake. It's like just talking with people and just like, and just like doing my little preacher about dreams and then that became some kind of a formula at some point. And I was disgusted. I was just like, what are you doing? What's going on with you? And that was the beginning of like a long healing process through a more mature understanding of myself. And that was very tough because then all my life was like from one thing to another, one concert to another, one record to another, and then you're having like awards, and then this, and then radio, and I hated everything about it because it was some kind of a reverberation of me being like, it was a reflection of me being such a fake, and they say, oh wow, I'm so happy. Well, I was not.
Right. Well, it's like going through the motions without just doing it because that's the way things are done, and that's the way maybe perhaps all you've known, but not actually taking time for you and analyzing you and looking at you and fixing you. Right. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's why I said, like at the beginning, just like being a dead fish. Everybody's like, "Oh, wow, you still have a bit of colors and enough to attract or to say, wow, that's awesome." And oh, look at the fish going so fast in the stream. But I mean, what people were maybe impressed or fascinated with was the stream. Was me. I was like completely out of it. So, and also, how do you? The moment when you stop is when you turn to your best friends, because again, we all came from nothing. We didn't knew nothing. It was all based on friendship, on working that we luck and all sorts of like different opportunities that we were able to get to that point. And we were a record away to become like something that would have been very more successful, I would say. Let's put it that way. And then I had to turn to my friends and just say, well, you know what, guys, I think that I'm having I think I'm dealing with depression right now. I'm helpless. I feel desperate, and I need now sometimes to look into it, to grieve my father. I never mourned him. We kept on growing, and so I need to address major things from a different perspective now. And so for me, that was difficult to envision, but also that was the perfect excuse just to say, well, I don't want to do that to my friends. But even though all my friends were trying to talk me out of this thing, you need to take some time because I was miserable. I was putting my uniform every night to do my thing. And then I was putting that back just like a sad clown every night, never smiling. And then suddenly, you need to go and do an interview, and you're just like someone that looks like, wow, that guy looks so uplifted. And that was just like nonsense.
What's interesting, Alex, is everything that you've said, this whole conversation that we've had with you, you're a very visual person. Every example that you've given, I can visualize in my mind. Like I can see you sitting beside your dad, having that first conversation, the forgiveness conversation. I can see you in church when it suddenly hits you and you start understanding. I can see you when you just said, taking off the clown suit. Like I can visual all of that.
That's right.
Like that is brilliant. If I can say I don't have that ability, right? I really don't. I don't have that ability to visualize as much as you do. Maybe it's the Montreal Canadian thing. I don't know.
Yeah. Or maybe it's the French Canadian roots trying to speak English in a proper way. I don't know.
Perhaps.
Maybe that's the thing.
Perhaps. Listen, Alex, what a pleasure chatting with you. And I mean, we didn't even get much into your music, but we'll definitely plug your stuff and get everybody listening to your stuff and point them into to your website and all to your socials and stuff like that. But what a great conversation.
That was the interview. What do you mean? I thought we were just like chit-chatting before actually recording.
Exactly.
Right.
And that's the kind of conversations we just love. I mean, talking about forgiveness and healing and reconciliation. What a great, encouraging conversation, especially for people that, I mean, you don't even have to be in the music business to enjoy a conversation like that, because this impacts everybody really at some point in their life, whether it's a relationship gone sour or their relationship with God. This is gold. This is great stuff.
But I don't know if I'm good for giving images, but I'm not very good at selling stuff, as you can see.
Selling stuff, yeah, right.
People would say, so have you talked about the records? No, they'll talk about it later. I'm just kidding.
Yeah,
but thank you guys for real. It's again, I'm very humble because I haven't done much of that kind of podcast and interviews. Most of the time we're talking about like music, about things that I'm maybe more, I won't say comfortable, but that I've been blended into for so long. So for me, talking with you guys and it's so refreshing because it's allowing myself to drop all the narrative that I'm so used to drop all the words that I'm so used to say and repeat for like campaigns and so on.
Sure, yeah.
That's so refreshing for me because then it goes back to the human thing. That's the level that I'm interested in now. Just to be honest, I don't have all the answers, but this is my story and this is that platform where we can share together and from that point on, so then we can welcome each other and keep building. So that's why thank you so much, guys. I was a bit nervous. I'll be very honest.
Well, you did really well, man. And that's what we're all about. We're all about digging into people's stories. And so we appreciate your honesty, your vulnerability.
And for not making this an interview, right?
Yeah.
Just a conversation.
It's really important. It's really, really important to us that we have these kind of conversations. Yeah. So thanks for just opening up and just being real and honest. It was so good to hear your story and hear what you're all about.
Thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much. And I hope we'll have the chance to chat a little bit more.
Thanks, Alex.
Take care, man. Have a great day.
All right. Love you guys. Thank you so much.
forgiveness and healing. Great story, and the nice thing is it's not a story really. It's his life, and it's many other people's life, right?
That's right.
So to hear the reconciliation between him and his dad, and I really like what he was saying about not hiding. In the end, realizing that you can't hide behind your outward appearance. You have to deal with that stuff inside. So whether it's the depression or blaming your past on the way you are now, like he's moved on. Like he's a different person. Like, can you imagine what it would have been like 20 years ago, or however, when he was still in the gangs and stuff? I mean, that's a total transformation right there. It's incredible. Mm-hmm.
It was awesome to hear how he took those elements of, hate and violence and self-destruction and turned it all into like amazing moments of learning for him.
Yeah.
It made him the man who he is right now. And so he can take these things and be like, yeah, I'm glad I'm out of that. But he's learned so much through that, through evolving from A to B.
Right.
And so it's really great for us to hear that story, hear that narrative, hear his learnings, and kind of like have a glimpse of the man who he is now through the lens of who he was before. It was really, really good. If you want to find out more about his music and his shows coming up, go check out his website, alexhenryfoster.com. All details are all there.
Well, let's get to our artist advice this week. Ryan Williams from River Valley Worship. A couple of tidbits for us here.
On a life level, I would say, don't for a single second waste a single second on worrying about anything. God is orchestrating things behind the scenes. He is in charge of your timeline. I spent so much time in despair because I worried about this thing or that thing, or was fearful about this thing or that thing when it came to, where I was supposed to go, what I was supposed to do with my life. And God had my steps ordered the whole time. And so I wasted so much time worrying. So I would say don't worry for a second. And then the second piece of advice on more of a creative level would be just don't edit too soon. Do your thing, make your music, build your craft, and when those moments of inspiration come, just let it come and get it out.
Don't worry, God has everything under control. And I guess from your perspective, Drew, this don't edit thing probably
that's
very important as well. Eh?
Yeah, that's one thing I tell a lot of the people that I mentor in songwriting or production. Just don't edit too soon. Just let it come out. Let it sit there. Let it just, let it lie there for a bit. You don't want to edit too fast. You don't want to censor yourself too quickly early on the stage. Mm-hmm. Let it happen. Let it flow out. That's an important step.
Good stuff. Well, that is it for this week, folks. Once again, we hope you enjoyed the show. Remember to subscribe to the podcast for new episodes every Monday. You can leave us a rating and a review. That, of course, just helps us reach more people all the time.
And of course, you can find us on all the social media as well, at least the important ones anyway. Mm-hmm. Twitter and Facebook. Apparently, we don't like Instagram. So you can find us there at Between Grooves. We would love to connect with you there and chat it up. And hopefully, we'll see you there. And if not, we hope to see you right here, right back on this amazing show that we love to hang out with you on.
Between the Grooves.
Between the Grooves.
I was trying to be dramatic there. Between the Grooves.
Between the Grooves.
I just got to say it lower. Between the Grooves.
Between the Grooves.
You're just saying it the same way over and over again. Between the Grooves. Between the Grooves. Between the Grooves. It's like this loop.
Between the Grooves.
Yeah, that sounded better, actually, Drew.
Thank you.
You're nuts. You're crazy.